You cheated on me while I was on a business trip, didn't you? We're getting a divorce. Give the house to my parents and leave right now. Jackson's voice boomed through the phone, a storm of accusation and anger. But I wasn't taken aback. I knew he was grasping at straws, trying to find a reason to blame me for his own failings. I already sold it, I replied coolly, feeling his emotions teeter on the other end. He thought he could outwit me, but he underestimated my intuition. I simmered with fury initially, but his feeble attempt at deception only made me smirk. It was my turn now. This is the tale of how my deceitful husband tried to manipulate me and how I outmaneuvered him. My name is Olivia, a 28-year-old working mom. I've been at the college store job since I graduated from junior college at 20. Jackson, 2 years my senior, now toils away in an office at a construction firm. But when we first crossed paths 3 years ago, he was adrift, jobless. He'd abandoned his first post-college job, claiming it wasn't right for him. Since then, he drifted between gigs, often idling. That's when he swept me off my feet, proposing in mere months. Okay, but there's a condition, I stated firmly, noting the worry etched on Jackson's face. What is it? He asked, apprehension creeping into his voice. You need to find a stable job. Otherwise, marriage is out of the question. We need to think about our future, I explained, my tone resolute. Oh, come on. Of course, but you're working, so there's no rush, right? Jackson attempted to brush off the seriousness of the situation. My parents would worry if I married a man without a job. Find one before we get married, I insisted, my gaze unwavering. Seeing my stern expression, Jackson sighed in resignation. All right, I'll find one. Then you'll marry me. Yes, and so it'll be, I affirmed, though uncertainty lingered in my mind. Reluctantly, Jackson embarked on his job hunt, eventually securing a position in an office at a construction company. We tied the knot. Back then, I viewed Jackson as somewhat careless about money and work. He'd quit jobs impulsively and didn't always grasp the gravity of financial matters, even in the context of marriage. Yet he was receptive when I spoke seriously. I believed that after marriage, I could guide him, fill in his gaps, and in turn, he would complement my weaknesses. Together, we'd form a strong partnership. But life proved to be more complicated than I anticipated. Jackson's apparent disregard for financial matters appeared to be a trait passed down from his parents. Around a year into our marriage, during our search for a house and discussions about securing a mortgage, Jackson dropped a bombshell. I might not be able to get a loan, he disclosed casually, leaving me stunned. What? I exclaimed, seeking clarification. Nonchalantly, he explained, I looked into it, and because I hadn't been at my job for long, I might need a guarantor for the loan. The only person I could ask is my dad, but he's dealing with significant gambling debts, so he probably can't be a guarantor. His revelation left me dumbfounded, especially with the contract and the real estate agent right in front of us. Yet Jackson seemed unfazed. If we put the house in your name, it'll be fine, right? You've been at your job forever, so you can get the loan. We'll both pay it off. It's just a formality, he suggested casually. That's not the point. Why didn't you discuss this with me? This is a big deal for me too. I'm not even prepared with the paperwork, I retorted, frustration bubbling within me. Though he apologized, his contrition felt hollow, lacking sincerity. Despite my urge to argue, I refrained from escalating the situation, considering the already prepared contract and the presence of the agent. Reluctantly, I hastily gathered the necessary documents, such as my income statement, for the loan application. In a spur-of-the-moment decision, I impulsively bought the house under my name. As I hurried to finalize the paperwork, a wave of anxiety washed over me. Could I truly envision a future with this man? Perhaps I should have simply put a halt to the proceedings instead of rushing to prepare the documents. Adding to my mounting anxiety was the looming issue with my in-laws. The other day, I had a talk with Dad. Jackson began one evening. He mentioned that he might lose the house due to the debts I mentioned earlier. He's considering moving in with us. That's all right, isn't it? What? Why would you even consider that? I responded sharply, hoping to convey the seriousness of the situation, but Jackson seemed unfazed. Well, he's in a tough spot. My brother is single, but he's working overseas. I'm Dad's only option. Shouldn't we discuss this properly? Maybe he can stay with us temporarily until he finds another place, but committing to having him live with us permanently is a major decision, Jackson reasoned, his expression troubled. You're just trying to avoid the issue. If he stays, we can split the living expenses. You're always complaining about money, he countered. You mean the money you never contribute? You promised we'd split the mortgage, but it's only coming out of my paycheck. You haven't paid your share. In marriage, finances are shared. It's not just your money, it's ours. It's only deducted from your account because the house is in your name. Stop being so self-centered, I admonished, frustration simmering beneath my words. My frustration boiled over, and I raised my voice, demanding answers. Jackson's response was simply, I hate talking about money, before abruptly leaving the room. These clashes became all too common, with Jackson consistently brushing off my concerns and retreating, leaving issues unresolved. Yet despite his aversion to discussing finances, Jackson wasn't entirely idle when it came to his family's predicaments. His role in construction site administration brought him into frequent contact with real estate contracts, leading him to consult a specific agency about the potential sale of his family home and the steps involved in securing the best deal. I've been considering selling the house for a good price, but I'm unsure about the process. What steps should I take if I decide to sell down the line? This topic was a recurring theme in our conversations. It was somewhat reassuring to know that I wasn't alone in contemplating these matters. However, the persistent notion of his family living with us post-sale always lingered in the back of my mind, causing unease. Jackson started holding meetings with real estate agencies and my parents-in-law behind my back, and his weekends away from home became more frequent. Eventually, he had to embark on a business trip that would keep him away for several months. The project required him to stay near the construction site until its completion. At the time, I didn't realize it, but the power struggle between us had already commenced. A few days after Jackson's departure, I decided to treat myself to tea after a shopping trip. As I entered the cafe, I was greeted by a familiar face. Recollecting past encounters, I recognized him as someone Jackson had once brought home. He worked at a real estate company, and Jackson had mentioned him as Samuel, a young employee who was relatively new to the company with less than a year under his belt. Oh, hello. You've been to our house before, right? I greeted him with a hint of recognition. Yes, I apologize for dropping by unannounced and even staying for a meal. My apologies, Samuel replied sheepishly. No worries. I should have been more hospitable, I assured him, gesturing for us to sit down and have tea together. Samuel proved to be very friendly and surprisingly sensible, especially considering his youth. We engaged in pleasant conversation over tea before parting ways. At that moment, I could have fathomed what would follow. Little did I know, this seemingly innocuous encounter would later be twisted into an accusation of infidelity. It happened when Jackson confronted me. You cheated on me while I was away, didn't you? We're getting a divorce. Give the house to my parents and leave now. His words hit me like a bolt of lightning. The first thought that crossed my mind was disbelief. Could it be true? Had Jackson spread rumors about me cheating, all to justify a divorce? The shocking revelation came from an unexpected source. Samuel, the very man Jackson falsely accused me of having an affair with. The day after our tea, Samuel showed up at my doorstep unannounced. I apologized for the sudden visit. About yesterday, Jackson asked me to get close to you, he confessed, his words catching me off guard. Shocked and confused, I invited him inside and listened intently as he unraveled his tale. Jackson had orchestrated a deceitful plan to frame me for cheating in order to expedite a divorce. He had enlisted Samuel to manufacture evidence against me. There were two underlying motives behind Jackson's scheme. Firstly, he coveted our house and sought to wrest it from my possession. Concerned about his parents' property, he believed it would be simpler to reside there with them. However, my objection to the arrangement thwarted his plan, leading him to concoct a scheme to evict me and claim the house for himself. Secondly, Jackson was engaged in an extramarital affair. Under the guise of discussing matters with my parents-in-law, he spent weekends with his mistress. Consumed by his infatuation, he viewed me, his wife, as an impediment to his happiness. By framing me for infidelity, he aimed to secure financial compensation in the divorce settlement. I always underestimated Jackson's intelligence, but he certainly proved to be cunning in the worst ways. Despicable, I muttered under my breath, my disdain evident. Samuel offered his apologies, but I had no intention of aiding Jackson in his deceitful scheme. I refused to be manipulated for such nefarious purposes. Thus, I feigned cooperation while secretly plotting to outmaneuver him. Taking advantage of Samuel's real estate expertise, I listened as he provided various suggestions. Eventually, he proposed a bold idea. You should sell the house while Jackson is away on his trip. When I finally uttered the words, I sold it, Jackson's reaction was a mixture of confusion and disbelief. What? He managed to sputter, clearly at a loss for words. Seeing his stunned expression, I resolved to twist the knife further. I recounted everything I learned from Samuel, including the recordings he provided. You were attempting to fabricate evidence to make it appear as though I was having an affair with him. If we divorce now, I can pursue alimony and court proceedings, I explained calmly, watching Jackson's bewildered expression as he repeated, Why? Why? But I had another revelation to share. You might not have realized, but Samuel isn't just an ordinary employee. He's actually the son of the company's CEO. Jackson's shock was palpable. What? How could I have missed that? He exclaimed, his confusion deepening. It was clear he had underestimated the gravity of the situation. Do you not realize that Samuel shares the same last name as the CEO? How could you overlook that? I questioned, incredulous at his obliviousness. Well, Samuel's last name isn't exactly rare. Jackson attempted to defend himself weakly. Wait, are you serious? He added, his incredulity growing. No, I'm serious, I asserted firmly, noting the shock in Jackson's expression. Samuel's company held significant importance to Jackson as one of his key clients. Additionally, they had provided crucial assistance with his family home matters. If news of his deceit reached the company's boss, Jackson would undoubtedly find himself in serious trouble. As it turned out, Samuel had already reported the situation. Hey, come on. All right, I'll look into it. If you're lying, I'll find out soon enough, Jackson responded before abruptly ending the call. It didn't take long for him to realize the gravity of the situation and the irreversible damage he had caused. Subsequently, the real estate company owned by Samuel's father refused to engage in any business dealings with Jackson or offer him advice regarding his family home. With no other options, Jackson was forced to return to his family home after concluding his business trip. Meanwhile, since I had sold my house, Samuel had graciously introduced me to an affordable apartment, leaving me with no concerns. As I initiated the divorce proceedings, Jackson persistently reached out, pleading for forgiveness. I'm sorry, Olivia. Please forgive me, he implored. It's too late now. You attempted to manipulate someone into trapping me. Why should I believe anything you say? I retorted, my resolve unyielding. Don't say that. Once we're divorced, you can marry that other woman, right? That's what you wanted, isn't it? I questioned, hoping to reaffirm his intentions. Yes, but she apparently had someone else she liked and dumped me. What a pathetic story, Jackson admitted with a hint of bitterness. Even if that's the case, don't expect me to welcome you back with open arms, I responded firmly, my patience wearing thin. With a sigh, I ended the call. Despite my efforts to keep my current address undisclosed, Jackson's relentless barrage of calls persisted. Each time, he'd plead, Don't leave me. Help me, I'll be a good husband, his promises ringing hollow in my ears. I grew increasingly exasperated with his empty pleas. Once the divorce was finalized, I resolved to sever all ties, deleting his number, blocking him on WhatsApp, and cutting off communication entirely. Yet, the unwelcome appeals didn't end with Jackson. Even my mother-in-law reached out, begging, Please, Olivia. We'll be lost without you. It's not the house we wanted. It's you, isn't it? But there's no house left, I pointed out, feeling a mix of frustration and disbelief. We didn't just desire the house. We're not that heartless. Come back, and you'll understand, she urged, her tone pleading. You were after the money, weren't you? I accused, feeling the surge of resentment. That's not true. You're being unfair. You tried to pressure me into living with you, and when I refused, Jackson attempted to manipulate me to gain an advantage in the divorce, she countered defensively. I can't trust someone like that. It's evident that your motives revolve around money, I asserted firmly, refusing to yield to Jackson's pleas. As I continued to reject his advances, my father-in-law dialed my number, his tone dripping with arrogance. Isn't it your duty as a daughter-in-law to show some respect to my wife? Are you seriously saying no? Isn't this all because of the debt you accumulated? He demanded, his voice growing increasingly strident. With each word, his accusations stung, and when I responded with equal resolve, his tone turned venomous. You heartless woman, abandoning your mother-in-law in her time of need and shifting blame onto her. I'll make you pay for your cruelty. He bellowed into the phone, the volume causing my ears to ring. Unable to tolerate his threats any longer, I abruptly ended the call and, clutching the recorded audio as evidence, sought counsel from my lawyer. It transpired that my father-in-law's menacing words could be construed as a threat. Armed with this knowledge, I informed Jackson that I would pursue legal action if he refused to consent to the divorce. In a state of panic, Jackson reluctantly agreed to the divorce, allowing me to sever ties with his tumultuous family once and for all. With the legal proceedings finalized, I found solace in the newfound freedom from their oppressive influence. However, the consequences of his actions soon caught up with Jackson. His reputation at work suffered, resulting in diminished responsibilities and a significant loss of trust from his superiors. Furthermore, the unresolved debt issue forced him to sell his family home at a depreciated value, leaving him and his parents to reside in a modest apartment. With his reduced role at work, Jackson's income dwindled, compounded by the financial strain of providing support to his dependent parents. The burden of alimony payments only exacerbated his financial woes. These unfortunate circumstances came to my attention through Samuel, who remained confident despite the tumultuous events. It was through Samuel's suggestion that I found a potential opportunity to leverage my customer service skills from my previous job at a clothing store. He proposed a position in his company's HR department, offering a chance for me to rebuild my life on my own terms. After discovering an opening that required strong communication skills, I deliberated extensively and sought advice before ultimately accepting the position at the real estate company. This decision marked a significant shift in my career path. Throughout this transition, Samuel and I maintained our close bond, which gradually blossomed into a romantic relationship. A year into our courtship, we exchanged vows and embarked on our journey as husband and wife, with me assuming the role of the future company president's spouse. The irony wasn't lost on me. The two individuals Jackson attempted to portray as entangled in an affair had ultimately found love and married each other. As I integrated into my new family, which included my in-laws, I was met with warmth and acceptance. Together with Samuel, I envisioned crafting a fulfilling and harmonious life, building upon the foundation of our shared love and mutual respect.